All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Jesus in Your Mental Health, and we have a wonderful two-parter. Well, actually, more than two.
Yeah.
Chances are this is going to be a whole series. So
we could talk about this all year.
If you're out there, if you have children, fear not. We are getting ready to answer all of your questions. So going to talk about parenting.
Yeah.
And going to do it in different segments by age group of your kids. So this first one will be early years. So for parents with young children, ages 0, 1 day to, let's just say 5.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to start.
I'm here in the playroom in our office.
Oh, yeah. It's very appropriate, stuffed animals and Barbies.
But I think that guy is a little creepy. Is it just me?
No, I agree. That's very creepy because it's sort of like an off-brand. It's kind of an off-brand stuffed animal. It's like that's not a real character.
It's like a fake Barney or something.
Have you ever seen Barney? Oh yeah. We used to make fun of Barney though. We were very hard on him. Have you ever seen the knockoff characters in costume? My wife hates characters in costume, by the way, like the person at Disney or something that dresses up. But especially the ones that are like knockoffs.
Oh,
those are really creepy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you want to have a little fun, just Google some of that. It's like epic fail.
It's always the eyes, in my opinion.
And
maybe the hand.
Well, let's talk about. It's funny. I was just remembering when something from my daughter's birth. My wife and I were talking about it yesterday, and then somebody else was telling me about how slow you drive home from the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, it was a couple that their kids are grown now, and they're like, they give you your kids, and you have no idea what you're doing. They just send you with a kid, like a living person, and you just are supposed to
no certification,
figure it out.
No class, just here you go.
Yeah. But what is that? Let's talk about the early childhood formation stages. I think that this age is very formative. All childhood is, but this one, what's happening developmentally in a child 0 to 5?
Yeah. So the brain, especially 0 to 2, is the most rapid development stage of the brain. And so it's really, really crucial to development. So obviously through age 5 is a big deal. That's all the preschool time. And so you are helping a child develop in the context of the relationships with their primary caregivers. So kids have to learn everything, right? And so they are primarily the first task of human development, theoretically, but I think we see some evidence of this, is learning to trust. So they're learning, am I safe? Are other people safe? Is the world safe? And you learn that in the context of that primary relationship, usually with mom, because mom is usually the vehicle of nourishment, which is also soothing. And so when your primary caregivers show up for you consistently and regularly, you learn to trust. You learn to trust that they're going to show up when you need them. And that then transfers to other people and to kind of the world at large. So trust is that first task.
What that makes me think of is how often the words "be careful" or "don't," come out of my mouth as a parent, especially when my kids were younger. And so just what a juxtaposition that is to think, okay, this child is trying to determine, is the world safe? Am I safe? Can I trust? Mm-hmm. And essentially the message they're getting a lot from their parents is no.
No,
it's dangerous. The world is full of danger.
Yeah. And some parents explicitly teach their kids that. I've had some of those conversations recently. And these are now adults who have difficulty going out of the house alone, have difficulty being in the house alone, because it's kind of been hardwired into them that the world is dangerous. And this is a tough one because the world is dangerous.
Mhm.
But living as if the world is dangerous all the time is not good for your mental health, for sure. For sure.
I've thought about that too. I mean, as my kids are now elementary age, but elementary and middle school,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which will be in a future episode. But the question comes up often, like, okay, do I warn them about a potential situation? And if by doing that, am I doing a good thing, or am I implanting this thought, in their mind that wasn't there before? It's like, hey, listen, if somebody ever tries to like take you into their car, they could be trying to steal you and then maybe murder you later. Like, I'm not going to say that to them,
Right, right.
But at the same time, don't get in the car,
Yeah.
somebody.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a delicate balance. Like you want to prepare them and not scare them. Like you want to give them some street smarts, but not make them scared to go out of their house. And so I think definitely how you do that's very important.
And we talk a lot about the secure bond of attachment, and as it creates this safe home base to like venture out from and return to. Yeah. I imagine that's a big thing being established. Or I don't know, maybe it's too early for that.
It is. No, I mean, it's being established from the beginning. I mean, as soon as kids start to get mobile in crawling even, right? Like that secure base is very important. And you'll see this with kids that are at the crawling stage, babies. They will kind of circle back and come back to that primary caregiver kind of just to check in, and then they'll go back out again. And that kind of continues over the course of development. So that secure base is forming early. Can I trust? Do I have a safe place to land? Right? Am I loved? Right? Will I be soothed? Will I be cared for in this place? Yeah. Or do I have to go figure it out on my own? Right. And there are early, like, that the founders of attachment theory did a lot of experiments, not experiment, they're more observation with chilled babies and their moms. And that's how they kind of developed attachment theory, and the styles of attachment were in observation with babies and moms. When moms would leave the room, how they would respond, and then how they would respond when they came back in the room was actually more important than how the babies responded when the moms left the room. Because it's normal for a baby to kind of whimper or cry when a mom leaves the room. But what happens when the mom comes back is actually what they found to be determinative of whether the baby was securely attached or insecurely attached.
And that's like I see a little theological thread there of presence. Like, because I was going to say, even just the face, like a facial expression, like, because at that age, a baby is not verbally communicative, but they're experiencing this real emotion of threat or comfort, and sometimes at nothing else than their parent being there.
Yeah, there's so much happening in that, like what you just said. That face to face is so formative for the brain, and babies are communicating before they're talking. They're communicating in their facial expressions. When babies make a funny face and you mimic that back to them, that's like a secure thing. Like, oh, I'm okay, I'm good, right? Because somebody's doing the thing I'm doing. And there's, the oxytocin from those, we call them mirror neurons. It's what happens when you're face to face. It's that exchange that happens. And so babies learn so much from that, and they can communicate in that way. They also communicate through their cry, because there's different cries for different issues. But there's a lot of communication happening emotionally before it's happening verbally, all through just presence, right?
Mm.
Which, I mean, gosh, yeah, there's definitely a biblical thread there.
It gives, there's so many parenting metaphors in the Bible, and even Jesus saying, I'm with you always, like that's what I think of. So when you have young kids, you're thinking, so they're asking these questions. Am I safe? Do I have a reliable caregiver? Do you want to solidify that attachment, that secure bond? But you're also trying to teach them, like train them, instruct them. Like this is a huge part of parenting, and it starts early, even though kids don't necessarily go to a formal classroom until 5 or older. But let's talk a little bit about that. What is that? What is the goal? Like as a parent, what are you trying to do in the training? Think about Proverbs 22 is train up a child in the way he should go. Okay, so what does that mean? We try to discipline our kids, correct them, help them to see right versus wrong or good versus bad. But what's the goal for the parent for this stage?
Well, we use the word discipline a lot, and the root of discipline is disciple, right? So I think ultimately we're discipling our kids, and we're discipling them in all the ways that we are humans and image bearers. So we have to teach them, we teach them about their internal world, like we just kind of talked about. We teach them about relationships and what's appropriate. We teach them how to, how to soothe early on. We soothe that about emotion, right? And that we get soothed in co-regulating. But as they grow, we teach them to self-soothe. Like within those first 5 years, we got to be teaching our kids how to self-soothe, right? And very, very early on, you can be teaching them about God and that God made them. All of that, teaching. I mean, at our church, thankfully, we don't have like a nursery, right? We have preschool ministry starting when they first come at 6 or 8 weeks or 12 weeks, or how early those babies are being prayed over. The scripture is being spoken over them, because even though they can't process and regurgitate it, it's laying a foundation, for their formation in that way. So we're teaching them about everything, and that is directly teaching, but it's also guiding. And at this stage, it's a lot of modeling. They're watching and taking in everything that we do. So they're learning how to be in relationships. They're learning who God is and how to be in relationship with God. They're learning how to do things, everything. They're learning to do everything. And so a lot of it is modeling.
So that emotional regulation, what happens if a child doesn't learn to regulate their emotions or self-soothe? I can think of a lot of people older than 5 who have a difficult time with that.
Yeah. Well, they become kind of codependent on another person or on a substance to soothe them.
Well, is there like a normative pattern for self-soothing? Like does it follow 4 steps or something like that? Like what does that look like?
That's a good question. And I don't know if I'm the expert here, but let me see if I can kind of think it through a little bit. I think that, so there's this movement of attachment parenting. And I think that some of the premise is like, never let your kid cry. Now, forgive me if you're an, expert on attachment parenting, because I am not. And it might just be the way people are taking attachment parenting and maybe taking it to the extreme. But there is this kind of movement that I have seen in attachment parenting, which seems to be like, don't let my kid cry. Don't let them feel anything negative. Don't say no to them. Let them sleep in my bed forever. Like they can't feel anything bad. And
gentle parenting.
Gentle parenting, attachment parenting. Yeah. And that's not really a good idea, because we grow under stress. We grow with difficulty. So I'm not saying you should leave your kid in their crib to cry all night long, but I do think there's some validity in allowing them to work it out. And I do think it's a natural, I do think it's a natural process that happens. And you can, this is what I always told people, I'm gonna have my kid I'm gonna let them kind of maybe not cry it out, but I'm gonna let them cry a little while. I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna soothe them. I'm gonna pat them and I'm gonna shush them, all the normal soothing things. And then I'm gonna leave again, right? And then I'm gonna come back in again and do it if they can't settle down. So it's kind of that you start, you don't just, it's not an all or nothing, right? I don't like never put them down, or I don't just throw them in the crib for 8 hours and never go in and check on them. It's an intermittent thing, right?
Mhm.
So, and then you begin to have longer and longer periods of time where you go in to soothe them, and they do learn to soothe themselves. I mean, a lot of kids suck their thumb, suck their finger. Pacifier is a soother, all of those sorts of things. I don't have a problem with any of those. I think those are very normal, natural things that can be pretty easily given up, at 2 or 3 years of age.
Mhm.
So I think that that's a typical way that it happens is you allow them a little more time in distress where you may not be right up on them holding them, but you're in proximity, right? You
Mhm.
come and you make yourself known, and then you give them a little bit of space again.
Mhm.
So that's what, again, not an expert view, but I know that that's what we did with our boys. And I think that that's
Mhm.
probably a pretty accurate description of how you might go about allowing that natural process of self-soothing to develop.
This is a bit of a rabbit trail, so I have to not go into it. But it's wild to think about how, like, what are the components? You think about a baby, and you said touch, presence,
Yeah.
a sound,
Mhm.
um, more physical, material kind of thing, stimulation that provides that soothing. And then as you get older, you think about it feels a little bit more mental. Like it's like, okay, I'm okay, like, but you still do need the
Mhm.
external things, but it
Absolutely.
becomes a little bit more of the concepts of them. And it still is rooted in relationship, though, I think, because, the relationship with your spouse or with God,
Yeah.
that it's like, I'm okay. I hear the sound of his voice, God's voice, or my wife's voice to say, hey,
Right.
it's going to be okay, or whatever. So those components stay kind of consistent, although the
Mhm.
way you access them changes over time.
Yeah. Like you're not sucking your thumb anymore, I'm sure.
I don't know. I actually never did. Okay.
Oh, aren't you lucky?
Speaking of
Yeah.
discipline,
Mhm.
how does a parent know of a young child, especially, how severe a consequence should be in when you start setting up? Hey, here's the boundaries. Here's the consequence. I think how God designs it is that one person thinks everything is too hard and one person thinks everything's not hard enough, like, or the consequence is too severe or not severe enough. And then
Yeah.
those two people get married. And so,
Yeah.
so what guidelines can you offer for that? I mean, the goal is you need to understand boundaries and consequences. Life has consequences. There are boundary lines. So what are
And I
some
always say
guidelines?
you want your kids to experience consequences in your home before they experience real life consequences. They
Mm-hmm.
need to be told no in their home before they get out in the real world, because no one's going to adopt your gentle parenting where you don't tell them no ever.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to happen. So how do you know? I think you train up a child in the way they should go, or he should go, whatever. It's going to be different for every kid. You have to learn their currency. You have to learn what is important to them and what's going to get their attention. For one kid, put him in his room might be, in a timeout might work. For another kid, removing a toy that's really important to him might work. But I will say it can't be too little or too much. There is kind of a Goldilocks just right. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you ground a kid for a week who's only, I don't know, 7 years old, you can't have this for a week. He forgets.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a useless consequence. So consequences should be pretty, pretty harsh and time limited.
Mm-hmm.
And so this leads me to like spanking because people are thinking it. So we might as well just address it. There's lots of different thoughts on spanking. I'll give you mine since this is my podcast. I am not opposed to spanking, but again, you have to know your kid's currency. And I don't think spanking is actually the most effective discipline for most kids. I don't think it's the most effective. I do think for this age group in particular, it might need to be used for issues of getting the message to them quickly. Like we used it a lot for like running in the road and like safety issues as a deterrent, right? But in terms of like a long-term strategy, I don't think it's the best teacher. That's just my thoughts. Do you have any thoughts on spanking?
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point I would agree. I have two kids, and they were each different. But my daughter was like, I think we might have spanked her twice, and then she was like, "Oh, I don't want that anymore." And so she learned how to not cross the line to that point. My son was a little bit more, but then he got to the point where it felt wrong because of how strong he was and how much he would like wiggle and fight you. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't want to hurt you, And
Yeah.
so that happened kind of quick, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it kind of leads me to the question. He's also very physically affectionate.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about their currency, I have heard it said that you shouldn't discipline a child in their love language or their, so because he's so into like physically snuggling and stuff like that, that it's almost more devastating to him to have that spanking. But I don't know if that's right.
Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't take away affection as punishment.
Mm-hmm.
Really in any kid.
Right.
So you have to figure out like, and the discipline, the consequence needs to fit whatever the situation is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if he's not cleaning up his toys, you might want to start removing his toys one by one,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he has to earn them back or something like that, right? Or if he's not coming, if he's not going to get ready for bed when he's supposed to, maybe his bedtime moves up,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like when our sons both, right, weren't getting to school on time, like we would back up their bedtime earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So then we would wake them up earlier. They'd have to get up earlier, right? So thinking about like what the behavior is that you're trying to change and coming up with a consequence that fits that thing in order to teach, right? All discipline should be teaching,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not just punishment. It needs to be teaching, right? And that's why people have their kids write apology letters or make
Mm-hmm.
amends, right? Because it engages the brain in like learning a different way.
What about, here's a side question. What about when your kid's old enough to know a consequence is coming and then you tell them it's coming and then they start saying, no, I learned my lesson. On the one hand, we want to teach our kids about grace, On the other hand, you want to not teach them that they can talk their way out of everything. So do you have any advice on that situation?
My advice there is be as consistent as possible and then be guided by the Holy Spirit for moments where you could give grace.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can't always give grace and you can't never give grace.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to be too inconsistent either. You want to be as consistent as you can with delivering the consequence you say you're going to, and every now and then surprise them with grace.
Mm.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that's biblical, but what I do know about kids is that they need consistency.
Mm.
They need to know that if they do this thing, they're going to get this consequence.
Yeah, routine is really important, right?
Routine.
Like that. How does routine play into providing stability?
Well, it is one of the ways you provide stability is that kids can rely on kind of a normal routine, a normal way the family functions. That's another way of providing safety,
Mm.
right? I know what's coming. I can rely, and then that's good developmentally for them, especially in the early years, right? You can't always be consistent and routine. And I'm not talking about rigidity. That's very different.
Hmm.
But as consistent, and those are the things that we come to rely on is Sunday family dinners, and this is what we do on Christmas Eve, and this is what we do with church. And like kids really thrive on routine. I mean, you see that in schools. They very much use that in schools.
And is there anything about like kind of speaking back to, I don't know if grace said, or consistency, okay, spontaneity or playfulness
Yeah.
from parents? Like what role does that play?
Well, I think that play is how children, especially at this age, learn. They learn through play. And so play is very important. It's very important for parents to get on the floor and play with their kids, right? And with whatever toys, games, sports, like you need to play with your children. It's bonding. They're learning through play. I mean, honestly, like I learned so much sitting on the floor with a kid with like a dollhouse. I learned so much about what's going on in their family from
Mm.
how they play with the dollhouse, or even how they play, one element of play therapy, sand tray. And there's a ton of figurines and what they choose to put in the sand tray and how they, like one time I had this kid, he really didn't want to talk to me at all, but I set down a bucket of Legos and he just started building Legos. And we had a whole conversation about the story of what he was creating with his Legos. And so you learn so much about your kid's inner world when you do that. Um, and then spontaneity, I mean, it's just fun.
Mm.
It's just
Yeah.
fun, to wake up your kids at like midnight and take them to Waffle House or something.
Speaking of modeling, you mentioned modeling before. Is there anything that you've learned recently about the role that distracted parents have to young kids? Like those terrible pictures that you see of the photographer who had the family sitting around and they're like looking at their phones, but then he like took the phones out of the picture and everybody's just sitting there looking so sad.
Yes.
Anything about that? Because I know a lot of us struggle to, like you talk about presence, like that's a struggle to not be distracted.
Yeah. I'm not sure of the exact data, but here's what I would guess based on what I know developmentally is that I'm not saying you have to be engaged 24/7, 365 with your kids, but when you're in a setting where you probably should be engaged, around a dinner table, in the
Mm-hmm.
car, in the family room at nighttime, um, at an amusement park, I don't know, times where you would normally be engaged and you are here and your kid can't access you, right? What they're looking at is like a blank slate. So
Mm-hmm.
they're void of learning even through modeling. I mean, it's kind of like a void, right? So
Mm-hmm.
my guess is that we're going to have kids who aren't developing in the same way that they should. And we're starting to see that maybe anecdotally in our practice. The kids are kind of like behind in especially their social development, right? So you got all these kids that like they're academically very intelligent, but they're kind of behind socially or they're anxious socially. And so I think that's what we're going to see is more kids who are just kind of behind or stunted in their development, social
Now, is
emotional.
that is that, are you saying that that's related to the parents' lack of availability emotionally? Like, I think it would be pretty easy to associate, oh, a kid's on devices too much and therefore socially is
Both.
underdeveloped. But that's fascinating to think about. Oh, because they're not getting all that inherent learning and the signals that they get from their parents.
Yeah.
I'll never forget Matt Chandler. I heard him say in a marriage thing, he's like, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. And because hate is at least passionate in a direction, you know,
right.
you know, but to be completely unresponsive and to not matter, like that's terrible. That's terribly hurtful.
And if you've seen that out in the wild, you probably have. I saw it at a brunch restaurant one time. It was a daddy and a daughter, and she was probably 6 or 7, and dad was just on his phone. And you could see her kind of look up at him. And I mean, she had a thing to color with, but like she would kind of look up at him and say something, but he wouldn't even look at her when she said so. It was heartbreaking. Like I wanted to go over and just shake him. It was really, really heartbreaking. And again, I'm not saying you have to give your kids do need board time. They do. They need time to like figure out how to fill their time. But I don't think at a brunch table is the time where they need to be bored. I don't think that that's it. I think you're missing a prime opportunity. I mean, I think at mealtime is when we are supposed to be, like if I think biblically, right? I think of Jesus and his disciples reclining at the table and they're sharing a meal and they're sharing life. And I think that's what we're meant to do.
And by the way, those mirror neurons, the function of mirror neurons doesn't stop when you're a kid. Like that's one of the reasons why relationships are so important, right? Because we grow exponentially in the presence of one another. And so we're always looking for those cues, from other people.
Yeah, totally.
Well, one of the things that often happens with when you have young kids is that you feel completely overwhelmed. Like some have called it baby jail, which I think is potentially a little harsh. But so what would be the encouragements for people who feel like, man, I'm just trying to keep up, and especially it can be tough if sleeping is not really a thing, or like, there's just all kinds of chaos and you go in different directions all the time and physical needs are very demanding or whatever it is. What encouragements are there for the overwhelm?
Oh, I remember these days for sure, and they feel like they're never going to end. So I will give some encouragement that they do end. And in the super early years when they're babies, about every 3 months, things change. And I mean, as they continue to grow and develop and can do more things, you can take a little bit of a breath. And I'm always cautious when we talk parenting to not give parents like just a longer to-do list and to make them scared about what they're not doing or doing wrong, because that's almost worse. Like I hope that parents hear this and are encouraged by it and a little bit more informed, but don't take it as like, oh no, I'm going to ruin my kids if I spend a little extra time on my phone or things like that. So I guess just encouragement to, I would say, don't isolate yourself, like be in groups with other moms or dads or parents, because you can learn a lot, but you can laugh a lot and you can share the load. When my kids were really little, my first one, I was in a group of a couple women and we did like a babysitting kind of swap. And so we were all friends and we would get together, but we would also like couple hours at a time, to give one another a break. And that was like super valuable. And that can, you can do that. You can do some, babysitting swaps and it helps share the load. I think there's a lot of parents right now that want to be completely all in and don't want to use babysitters and don't want to send them with grandparents. And my encouragement is always to figure out some trusted people that your kids can go and be with. One, it's going to be great for their development. especially with trusted grandparents and other family members.
Mm-hmm.
And 2, you do need that time away from them. Like, you need to go be an adult. You need to go be a wife and a husband and enjoy one another, to make you a better, right? To fill up your cup, to be a better parent.
Mm.
So those are a couple things, I think.
The most cliche advice that I've gotten that's turned out to be so right is don't rush it.
Yeah.
It's like, because everybody says that, right? But then when your kids go from phase to phase to phase, it feels like a lifetime ago. And it feels like yesterday, but also feels like a lifetime ago. And it feels like it went like so quick. So I have to get around people with young kids and get my baby fixed. I like to hold a baby every once in a while.
Listen, I mean, you got to go into the baby room and just hold some babies. I bet you'll have an opportunity on Easter weekend to hold some babies.
Yeah, babies love me. So
I believe that. Anytime I work in kids ministry, when a man walks in the room, it's like they all get quiet.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe one other comment which you said is that you don't put so much pressure on yourself that like not getting it exactly perfect is going to like ruin your whole kid's life, because consistency matters over much more than perfection. And you're laying a foundation, not setting something in stone that could never be changed. Right. We all learned a lot of things as we grew older that, okay, maybe mom and dad didn't quite, get this one the way that maybe they should have, but I've gotten past it, so there is hope.
Yeah. Presence is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a thread in what we've talked about today, is that presence is so important. And it's important to making sure it doesn't go too fast either. When you can be present with just this stage, both surviving and trying to thrive in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to go to part 2, but we'll end this one here. So say a prayer for parents with young kids, changing diapers, handling bottles, and finding the pacifier.
Yeah.
The grace of the Lord be with you all,
I will. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for parenthood. I thank you for the gift of life that you entrust to us to steward. And so I pray, Lord, that the parents listening would just take on that mantle of stewardship, that these children are from the Lord, and that it is we just get to steward them for a time, and we get to help train them up in the way they should go. Lord, I pray for strength and resilience and sleep for all the parents in this stage 0 to 5 who are struggling. Lord, may the words that they hear today be encouraging and not shaming or guilting. May they just feel your presence evermore to complete these tasks that you've given them in parenting, Lord. It's a high calling, and we thank you for it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to Jesus and Your Mental Health. If you would take the time to review and subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, it would mean a lot to us. If you'd like more information about Rebecca Maxwell's practice, go to jesusandyourmentalhealth.com. This podcast and the information provided by Rebecca Maxwell and her guests are solely intended for informational and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as a substitute for advice, diagnosis, or treatment regarding medical or mental health conditions. Although Rebecca Maxwell is a licensed marriage and family therapist, the views expressed on this podcast should not be taken as medical or psychiatric advice. Always consult your physician before making any decisions related to your physical or mental health. If you are in a crisis, please contact the crisis text line at 988 or the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-TALK, or call your local emergency services by calling 911. Join us again next time for Jesus and Your Mental Health.